when we get together, that feeling just comes out, and it's like, then it is a done deal. You know, you've got what you came for. The topic for this school this weekend was to learn more deeply about our true nature and the true nature of the principles and of life. And that experience started last night. We all felt that. And there's something so simple that sometimes we don't see it. That feeling we get is who we are inside. So we've already got what we're looking for. It's our true nature already expressing itself and teaching us. So I love the question that came out about, could you share what the principles are? Basically, what the principles are. Because that's who we are. We're the principles in action. So it's like introducing ourselves to ourselves. Like, how do you do? I'm the principles in action. And what's so beautiful and simple about that is that when that feeling comes out, it's teaching us. It gives us insights. That feeling is mind, consciousness, and thought in motion. So for me, the direct experience of that was when I had my first insight after a tremendous amount of resistance to this understanding. And the insight I had was thought creates feeling. That was the first principle I realized. Now, I didn't know at the time that that was the principle, but I knew when I heard that message from the inside out, it had power for me. And it changed my life in that instant. And for the first time, I got a glimmer of what Sid was talking about. What I didn't know then is that I was teaching myself. You know, that insight was so simple, yet so powerful, but I didn't know it was a principle. I didn't know that I was self-educating myself in that moment. You see the simplicity of that? Now, had Sid been there at that time and had said to me, you know, dearie, thought creates feeling, which he had said countless times to me in that year and a half of resistance, I never heard it. Had he been there at that moment when I did have that insight, I might have attributed it to him. Ah, that was Sid that gave me that insight. I wouldn't have perhaps realized as fully that that was coming from me. But I got a sense for the first time that there was something inside of me that could be released. Prior to that, I thought wisdom was learned, you know, from experience on the outside, that if you had a problem with somebody and you solved it, well then that was wise, that was wisdom, you know, or you were educated, or you studied philosophical or psychological books. I had absolutely no idea that there was an innate wisdom from inside. So I had that insight in the midst of anger, which is another marvel that I marvel about to this day, because we tend to think you can only gain insight in a quiet mind. That's true, because for a moment, a split second, there must have been quiet for that insight to come through. But the fact that it came through in the middle of anger, that there was a moment of clarity for that insight to reveal itself, says a lot. It gives hope. It gave me hope that there was something inside of me, something worthy inside of me. And it was evidence that there was something inside of me, because I never knew that spiritual fact before, that thought creates feeling. I always thought my circumstances, and primarily my husband, created the feelings of anger or frustration or stress. I never ever considered it was me. I had nothing to do with it. I was this innocent homemaker doing the best I could, and, you know, preparing 3 meals a day and washing his clothes. And it was because, you know, of things he did or the children did. And so to gain ground that I had something to do with it. And then when Sid came along, you know, after knowing him and his wife and being friends with them and really enjoying our insecurity together. I mean, we blossomed in our insecurity. You know, we blossomed in sharing with each other all that was wrong with the world. We really had a good time talking in that vein. And then the man goes and he has this enlightenment experience. And now all of a sudden, his insecurity is gone. What's that about? How can that happen? And now, all of a sudden, instead of saying, yes, it's awful, he's saying, you know, I found the secret to life. And it's all inside of you. And insecurity is just thought. Yeah, right. You know, pull the other leg is what I would think and say. And yet, even in my disbelief and in the rhetoric that Ken and I exchanged about what was going on with this man, and getting, you know, frightened about the change in him, although it was a beautiful change, and then getting angry at the change in him, even though we saw his relationship with his wife and his children and his friends and his work blossom. That frightened us. Beauty frightened us. Peace frightened us. But still, what kept us glued to him, despite our fear, was there still was a feeling that drew us, that wouldn't let us stay away, that fascinated us, intrigued us, despite our intellectual fear of where that man was coming from and how he was now living. You know, the inside versus the outside. It's an interesting story, isn't it? We talk in our invitation to you all about thought being the bridge between the form and the formless. For me, feeling was and is the bridge between the form and the formless. When I had that insight, it came from the unknown. It came from this essence of mind, of consciousness, and revealed itself via thought. So we have mind, which is essence, which is us. We're part of it, but being part of it means we're also it. You know, you can't be part of something and divorced from it. If you're part of it, you're it. And consciousness, although I didn't know it at the time, was my awareness of that insight. Thought creates feeling. And it came to me expressed via thought. Right? So there's 3 principles in action at the same time, revealing what I thought was one principle. Do you see how all 3 are working together? Insight comes from mind. Our awareness of the insight is consciousness. And thought is the vehicle of expression from the formless to the form. That's it. That's what it is. That's what this gift is that Sid brought to the world. And at the same time, that's how it works together, spiritually.